Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 150 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. Now, lately, there has been a lot of conversation and push to get financial literacy and education into schools. Now, with the majority of people living paycheck to paycheck and many pointing at the lack of education as the possible reason, many feel that financial literacy classes would help a lot of people avoid the financial hardships they are facing. But here's the thing, is teaching personal finance in schools the ultimate answer? Would that fix the majority of the problems that we are seeing with a lot of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, are racking up credit cards, high car payments, and it's causing a lot of stress? Is it even a good idea? We're going to be talking all about it on today's show. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, how is everyone doing today? You can find me on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. And as always, guys, welcome to today's show. So glad that you guys are joining us. And remember to get all the resources, show notes, and links that are mentioned in today's show. You can head over to balancesense.com/150. That is BALANCEDCENTS.com/150. So, guys, we got a really good topic today that we're going to be talking about in regards to bringing education about personal finance into schools. And I couldn't think of a better person to bring on to this show and has way more expertise with this topic and this subject than any of us on this podcast. And I wanted to bring my buddy Chris on the show, and I'd like to welcome Chris to the podcast. Now, Chris started his financial journey just like a lot of us did back in 2004. Chris was also living paycheck to paycheck with no money in savings, no retirement, no college funds for his kids, and he was up to his eyeballs in debt. And after a lot of hard work, Chris worked his way completely out of debt, becoming debt-free. And everything we share on this podcast, Chris has been doing actually longer than all of us for almost 18 years now. And today he is no longer worried about money. He's been debt-free since late 2008. He even put 2 of his 3 kids through college debt-free. The third decided to become an electrician, and Chris was a teacher. And early on in his journey, he decided to start offering a course in financial literacy to his students. So he's been teaching kids about personal finance in schools for many, many years. And again, I couldn't think of a better person to bring on to share his experience. So Chris, hey, welcome to the show, man. We appreciate you.
Brad, I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to always have a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I do have to mention just the personal side. Now, Chris was doing financial coaching. You've helped a lot of people, get out of debt and do a lot of the same things that we're doing here at Debt Free Dad, but you've kind of traded that in and you have, because I think this brings a lot of importance to having really good control of your finances, because it's opened up some great options for you. Can you share a little bit about the complete change that you've made just recently?
I absolutely can. So one of the things I know that you teach, one of the things that I taught my students when I was doing financial coaching that you share with your clients is when you get control of your money, money no longer is in control of you. When you tell your money what to do, money is no longer telling you what to do. And what that means for me is the flexibility, the freedom to make a decision to do something totally different, to live somewhere totally different. And we bought a house up in the mountains of North Carolina, right on the Georgia-North Carolina line, back in September of 2020, and decided we wanted to live here. And so I spent 2 years trying to find a teaching job up in this neck of the woods, and one did not open up. So you know what I did, Brad? Decided to do a career change. And when you have no debt, you got money in the bank, you have that freedom and have that flexibility to make a decision to do something totally different. So I have opened up a home churned ice cream shop here in the mountains of North Carolina in Georgia.
Yeah, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. And I've been following your Facebook page and watching some of your Facebook lives, and I'm so excited for you, man. It fits you good, and what an awesome change. And just, again, it goes back to that opportunity when you have control of your money it opens up more options for you to make different choices, and perfect example of that. So thanks for sharing that. So guys, we're going to talk a little bit about this. Before we do this, I want to just pour into a little bit of this in a Forbes article that I found. And it shows a couple of just facts about what's currently happening with financial literacy and financial education in schools. In an article titled, "These States Now Require Students to Learn About Personal Finance" by Kelly Ann Smith, it says Americans struggle with financial literacy, and it's rooted in how they're exposed to money from childhood and on. A widely cited study by Standard & Poor's in 2016 found that only 57% of adults in the United States are financially literate, meaning they understand 3 out of 4 fundamental concepts for financial decision-making. Now states are stepping in to require students to learn more about personal finance in schools. States like Florida, Nebraska, Ohio, Rhode Island have all recently passed laws making personal finance courses a graduation requirement for high schoolers. The push comes after the coronavirus pandemic wreaked havoc on the American economy and flipped the financial well-being of many Americans upside down. The pandemic brought to light how important managing their money was because so many had to cut back on law after they lost their jobs, says Lee Singleton, director of Monify Bank Money Moments, a consumer financial education program. And they say it's an important topic to be teaching our kids. Only 7 U.S. states now require students to learn about personal finance: Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, and Virginia require high school students to take at least 1 semester of personal finance courses before graduation. 1 is currently implementing the requirement, Iowa, and 4, Florida, Nebraska, Ohio, Rhode Island, are preparing to implement it in the near future. Now, Florida is the most recent and the largest state to make personal finance classes a graduation requirement starting in the 2023-24 school year. Students entering high school will be required to take at least a half a credit in personal finance courses before they graduate. That course will teach money management essentials, including how to open and manage a bank account, and wait for this, guys, basic principles of money management, and how to complete a loan application. But while only 7 states mandate personal finance classes at a graduating requirement, standalone personal finance classes are becoming the norm in schools across the country. As of March 18th of 2022, there are 43 bills in 21 states to mandate that schools teach financial literacy as their own courses, according to Next Gen Personal Finance's 2022 FinEd Bill Tracker. Though these new mandates are garnering attention, teaching personal finance in schools isn't a new concept. Most states have laws that recommend including personal finance into high school curricula, but most are taught as a supplementary material in other courses, such as like an accounting class or an economics class. Experts are critical of this type of approach. Because of this, it says if personal finance is not guaranteed as a standalone course, unfortunately, it doesn't always get taught because of overcrowding in curriculum, says Christian Sherrill, Director of Partnerships and Advocacy at the Next Gen Personal Finance, a nonprofit that advocates for teaching personal finance in schools. Singleton adds that in standalone courses, teachers are able to dive deeper into topics and let kids use hands-on methods of learning to fully grasp financial concepts. 2 things that might not be possible when squeezing it in to another course. And I'll share this little quote because I think it's important. I think we can talk about this a little bit. It says, imagine trying to speak another language or learn any subject after only getting 10 hours of instruction in 1 semester. And that was one of the quotes. And obviously this article goes on and talks a little bit further about this, but that's kind of, again, the real gist of what they were kind of getting at. So, guys, let's kind of use that as the starting point. So I just want to ask both of you, should personal finance be taught in schools?
I would, for me, I would say it really is. It's a 2-word. You want it. You're like, how can the shortest answer I can give is yes, but is in really big capital letters. That's how I feel. I think it's important because we live in a state where it's mandatory, and I'm not going to say my kids didn't learn anything of value in that class, but they learned a whole lot of nonsense as well.
And we could dive into a couple of those examples. Chris, as the expert on the show here today, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Well, before I answer that question, let me give you a little bit of background here. In 2008 to 2011, I think I've told you this before, I did my doctorate degree in workforce education. And my dissertation was in financial literacy education. And in 2011, there were only 4 states that mandated. Utah, Missouri, Tennessee, and then North Carolina was coming on board. And so in 11 years, we've gone from 4 states to 7. something's wrong with that idea, even if the answer to your question is yes. It seems to me that we should have a lot more than 7. Now, I will say that Georgia did just pass a law right after Florida that will be mandating it here in a couple of years as well. And Georgia has always been one of those states that say, yeah, we offer it, pat ourselves on the back, we teach financial literacy. But it was in an economics class where financial literacy was the last of 5 units, and teachers would tell me they had maybe 3 to 4 class periods a year to teach the topic. So you mentioned 10 hours of instruction. It would have been a lot less than that.
Yeah.
But yet the state can pat themselves on the back. Now, getting to your question, one word, depends. Because the obvious answer, like Ryan mentioned, would be yes. You would think that that's something we'd want to have in schools, because the obvious answer can't be no. But let me ask you something, Brad. Before you started your journey, how would you have defined financial literacy?
Good credit score.
Okay. I mean, if somebody said to you, you should learn to manage your credit wisely, what would that have meant to you?
If someone would have said that to me, I would have just thought, make your payments on time and, don't miss any bills. That would have been it for me, because back then it was like debt was normal. Payments were normal.
So the reason I say that is everybody's got an opinion of what it means to manage credit wisely. Correct?
Correct.
Yep. Everybody's got a definition of what financial literacy to them means. But we throw out buzzwords like that as if there's something important. But yeah, we've never taken the time to actually define what those terms are. And so we talk about depends. Should it be in school? Well, it depends on what's going to be taught and who's going to teach it, in my opinion. Because not only is 10 hours of instruction not enough, I got asked to teach an engineering class a few years ago, and I know nothing about engineering. And those kids got the worst engineering instruction they've ever gotten in their life. Why? I had no clue. But yeah, we want to put teachers in the classroom and ask them to teach something that they have no background and no experience on. So that's why I say depends. Sorry for the long answer.
No, I think that's a great answer, and I think that for me, I'm in the same boat. I think it depends. I'm yes, but and I think it all goes down to what's going to be taught. And I think this brings up a lot of different types of subjects. Another one that's kind of a hot topic here in the school, in the school curriculums is, I kind of compare it to financial literacy is sexual education. And everyone can determine what that means. What does it mean to be educated with that? And every single family has a different opinion as to what should be taught and what shouldn't be taught, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to personal finance, because it's such an opinion. You can go on TikTok, you go on social media, you see all these people talking about having success with money, and every single one of them has a different opinion or a different philosophy on how to kind of do that, right? And now we're trying to bring this into the school system and say, okay, we're just going to teach this. And here's my fear. And you guys agree or disagree. My fear is that, well, we're going to go down the same road that's really just been keeping most people living paycheck to paycheck, and we're going to talk all about credit scores. We saw in the article, it was all about how to apply for a loan. We're in my son's 2nd grade social studies book. He had a lesson on a farmer, and it was just a little economics, personal finance lesson. And one of the things that read there is that when the farmer ran out of money and he didn't have any money saved, he put all of his bills on a credit card. But nowhere in the lesson did it talk about maybe the farmer should have been smart and built up an emergency fund, right? And, it never talked about any of those options. So that's my fear, is that on the surface, this looks great. And if you ask anybody, like if I were to go in our Life Without Payments group that's got almost 13,000 people, and I said, do you think financial education should be taught in schools? It will be flooded with yes, because on the surface, it sounds like a good idea. But if you dig deeper, it can start to get a little scary, in my opinion, when you start thinking about what's going to be taught, and are we just creating more broke people living paycheck to paycheck because of what is going to be taught?
Yeah. And Chris, I would love your take on this too, because I think one of the things I've heard a lot, and knowing, we know some people that are teachers. I think in general, just especially public education in general, it's not super well funded. There's not like tons of money being thrown around for teachers to go out and school systems to go out and buy like really great curriculum. So I'm I guess I'd just like to understand, is that fairly accurate from your perspective? That, I mean, from a budget standpoint, I mean, schools just don't have tons of money that they can go out and buy stuff like this.
I would say that, now I came from a private background,
Okay.
but I've got enough public school friends and enough experience to realize that there's enough money to do anything they want to do. There's enough money there. The question I think that should be asked is, does it require a lot of money to find the right curriculum? And that sort of comes back to, I think, the question that we've been bouncing around is, that what do you teach? And I decided to teach a curriculum that required the school to invest about $400 for a set of DVDs, and then each of our students, $15, $20 to buy a workbook. And that was the extent of it. The other question, though, is are they going to fund sending teachers to courses that's going to help them better teach the material? But in order to do that, it comes back to what you're going to be teaching. And so I think the answer to your question is there's certainly enough money. That's a whole other topic of whether there's enough money in public education. The question, though, is how do you best reuse those dollars? And I think the gist of your question, though, Ryan, is getting to this. Is everybody, we'll say banks, for example. Banks are quick to create their own curriculum, their own courses, their own material, and put it out there. And some teacher who's now forced to teach a class that they may not have a lot of experience in, that's where they're going to turn to. They're going to turn to those resources. And now what you end up with is a teacher in a classroom who, in essence, is doing the marketing and the sales for the whole banking industry.
Yeah.
And it comes back to something you said a minute ago, Brad, sexual education. Well, let's talk about in a health class. A teacher's not going to go in and teach kids, hey, a good way to use drugs wisely is to just not overuse them. Or you're not going to teach a kid to drink alcohol and just don't drink too much. But yet that's what we turn around and we do when it comes to debt. We try to teach behavior when in reality, you can't teach a behavior. You can teach the dangers. And that's what I always try to do as a teacher, is teach the dangers. What can go wrong? And your group, you said you've got 1,300 or something people that have commented on a number of occasions on their biggest fears and the things that hold them back. Ask those people, would they want a teacher to teach their kids the same mistakes that they made? I think you get a different answer to that question about whether or not, personal finance should be taught in schools. Because I don't think there's too many people in your group who've been successful now and who've seen a different way would say, yeah, I think I want the teacher to go into that classroom and teach my kids how to make the same mistakes I did. They're not going to do that. And so I think sometimes it's in how you phrase the question or what question you ask.
And I think where you went is kind of what I was thinking in my experience with my kids bringing stuff home. I'm fairly certain, based on some of the stuff they brought home from financial education, is, the big credit names in the industry, banking you mentioned, but the credit cards, those sorts of companies, they have entire curriculums written from the time you're kindergarten till the time you're in college. And it is not written towards like not using their products. It's all written towards using their products. And that's some of the stuff my kids brought home during their financial classes. It was like, some of it was okay. It was like, yeah, that makes sense. Savings is good. Having, they would say, yeah, we got to have they do talk about having an emergency fund, which is great. But then they would get into how to apply for a loan, why you need a good credit score, all these other things that, like you said, it's just feeding what we have learned and what we learned the wrong way for all these years. No, none of that curriculum is going to teach that, because that does not benefit them in the long run, because they make money off of us by teaching us how to be bad with money.
Sure. Well, put yourself in the shoes of a teacher who hasn't had the experience that we have, who doesn't see things from a different perspective, who may be going through that paycheck to paycheck and really deep down inside believes that that's right and that that's normal and that you can, in fact, use credit wisely. And now you've been tasked with the job of teaching something. You're going to teach the stuff that you believe to be true. And so it's not just the banks. It's also a lot of these nonprofit organizations. You go and look at their curriculum. They'll use that, teach students how to use credit wisely. When that is an ill-defined problem. There is no right answer to that question. So there's just so many facets to it. But yeah, Ryan, I think a big part of it starts with who's funding it dictates what you're teaching.
Yeah. So, Chris, what is your experience? Because obviously you are a big proponent of, no debt, less debt, paying cash, doing a lot of things we talk about on this podcast. So now here you are, you're teaching a lot of these kids. Number one, what was their experience? I'm guessing you've had success stories and students come back to you. And did you get any pushback from the parents because this is such I don't know if you'd call it odd or unique, but it's not the most popular way to handle your money right now. I mean, obviously, we all know that. This is, debt is normal, credit cards are normal, car payments are normal. Like, we know what we're doing is not normal. So when these parents are hearing about this, what was their response? Negative, positive? What was your experience with that?
I think overall, if we take the big picture, overall, the response was great. They really enjoyed the fact that there was a school that mandated, and we mandated it since 2015, a course in personal finance in order to graduate. Now, I think the gist of your question is the content. Did they all agree with it? Because I certainly never taught anybody to borrow money. I never once encouraged any student for any purpose whatsoever other than a home to borrow money. And that means no student loan debt, which a lot of students, oh no, I can't go into the college that I want to because that's the only way to pay for it. All right. So yeah, there's a little bit of pushback there. And then of course you get some pushback from some of the parents who think that debt's a good thing. I mean, that is the norm. That is the most popular opinion out there. But I think from the top level down, they just were happy that there was discussions going on at school. And by and large, the student response was, this is one of the most useful classes I'm ever going to have in my life. Yeah. When do I need to know about how to do derivatives, or when am I going to need to know how to balance a chemical equation? Those things certainly have their own place. But it is one class that I think by and large, the students would tell you that they enjoyed the discussions. And sometimes they would push back. My dad and I were talking about, my dad says, you should do this. And I say, listen, one of these days, you're going to be an adult. And one of these days, you're going to have to make financial decisions for yourself. But you will not be like the average American who does sort of have an excuse and can say, well, nobody ever told me. Nobody ever told me not to get a student loan. Nobody ever told me that I could avoid car loans. You will not have that excuse. And so if you end up like the average American, you can only blame it on yourself. And I think by and large, a lot of them, they buy into that.
Yeah.
They're at least willing to entertain and listen to your argument.
Yeah. I can't tell you, though, Chris, when you said that, how many people will come into our program, or people that I talk to, and they say that. They say, was never shown how to be successful with my finances. I'm only doing what I've always known, which is live paycheck to paycheck, or be broke all the time, or use credit cards, or, it's such a common excuse that I hear time and time again. And you bring up like some of these other, classes that are happening in class. In fact, right before we came down here to record this, I was talking to my son Noah, he's in 7th grade this year, and I asked him. I said, hey, we're getting ready to talk about financial education in schools, and I had just said, hey, have you guys been talking about money in any of your classes, or is there any mention of it? And he's just kind of thinking, he's like, nope, not at all. And that's in 7th grade. Now, again, I understand, like, they shouldn't be personal finance experts by them, but I think if you're going to properly do it, it's got to be something that they continuously keep learning throughout the years as they get older. It can't be, in my opinion, I don't think it could be just one semester or one class in high school that's going to be the fix-all for this. It is too connected to life to just let it go just to be a semester or one grade level or any of those things. I think it needs to be something that they need to be taught as they grow up.
And I think most parents, I'm, just from kind of thinking back to my days of like the paycheck to paycheck mindset and lifestyle, if I didn't like do what I did and my kids came home and were like, or my kids were in your class, Chris, and were like, yeah, this guy says I shouldn't have loans and I would literally just be unteaching them everything you're teaching them, because to me, that's like as much as like we want to rely on teachers to teach our kids, I think like at home where they're with their parents all the time. Like I remember, Brad and I remember our parents, you always have a credit card. You'll always have debt. No matter whatever happens, the second you get ahead, you'll have to charge something. And it's like, when that is the mindset of the majority of the people, I feel like we're just fighting. We're teaching an uphill battle in some ways, because it's like you're trying to teach against this societal idea that payments are normal and just deal with it. I mean, there are a ton of country songs written about just being in debt.
I would say to that, were there parents that are unteaching some of the things that I taught? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can only, as a teacher, do what you can do. I always tried to look at it from the perspective of, I'm giving them a different perspective. I'm giving them a different argument. And I told my students day number one, you have a right to question anything I'm teaching you. You have a right to question it. That's part of what education and part of what learning is learning to ask questions. Don't just accept something because somebody tells you it's a certain way. Why is it that you, as our teacher, believe you should stay out of debt? Why is it that you, as our teacher, believe that you should have an emergency fund? And at the end of the day, you are presenting your case, you are presenting your argument. And if the parents undo what you've done, at least they've heard it. That's how I always approached it as a teacher, is knowing that I've at least done my valiant effort to give them the information. And I think, though, this brings a bigger point that probably deserves to be discussed at some point is, Brad, you've got your followers, and you've done a phenomenal job of helping a large number of people get closer to the point where you and I are. And I think the question that parents should start asking themselves is, what role do they play in their child's education?
Yeah.
And I always encouraged Ryan, not encouraged, I mandated it because I could, where I was at a private school, that my students had to do, for lack of a better term, homework with their parents, where they were forced to come home once a week and have discussions. And it might have been doing a budget with their parents' income and expenses. And by and large, most parents would do it. There were some that initially early on gave a lot of pushback, but they would do it. And they would tell you at the end of the semester that, thank you for making us have these discussions. Thank you for making us get on the phone with our kid and call and do, price out insurance. Thank you for making our kids price out a vacation for $2,000 and realizing that it doesn't go as far as they think it does. Thank you for making our kids do this discussion, that discussion. And I think the broader point here is that having discussions at home, whether the parent agreed or disagreed with what I was teaching, I think still forces the kids to think. And there's some level of learning that goes on there, and it makes them a little bit more informed. And so I think the bigger, broader question is I think every parent or person who listens to this podcast, who's part of your group there, Brad, is they should embrace conversations with their kids.
Yeah.
Even if they've done a terrible job with money, there's something that you can teach your kids. Don't do like I did, and let them go through the journey with you. Let them see the lows and then building up to the highs, paying off debt, and all the things that budgeting and emergency funds do for them. That, to me, is much more valuable than necessarily what is taught in a school.
Yeah, I would 100% agree, but my feeling on that, maybe we bring you back on another episode to talk about this, but if I'm a parent who's struggling living paycheck to paycheck and I haven't figured it out, I'm feeling like, what can I offer my child in education because I feel like a failure? Right? So I think that's where this viewpoint in a lot of ways comes from, where everyone feels like sometimes like, if I was just taught this in schools, that would have fixed everything. But I am actually in more agreement with what you said, is that I think the real answer is at home. And yes, education in schools can be valuable when it comes to personal finance, but I think the majority of it lies on the parent's shoulder, my shoulder, Ryan's shoulder, your shoulders. When you got kids, like, money is just such an important part of life in the sense of the stress you'll feel or the peace of mind you're going to feel. Like, I feel like we need to be taking 100% responsibility for the education that we're giving them about money and how to use it. And education from a school level should be more of a supportive role of that. And then, like you said, Chris, to open up conversations that you're having about money and giving them tasks to do and things. I think those are all great things. But as a parent, I think where a lot of people get stuck on why they don't teach their kids is because they're only showing them what they know, and what they know is being broke, right? And I think that's why we're continuously seeing generation after generation of people that, you know, they're continuing to struggle because it's all they know.
So I totally get that, and I totally agree with that. And my response to them would be this: teaching your kids where you failed with money at home in an environment that you can control, and being honest with your kids. Because here's the thing, you are your kids' parents. If they go to school and they do a worksheet with Jim and Mary, a married couple, that's a fake couple on a piece of paper, and that piece of paper is busy work, and it has no meaning to those kids. What has meaning is what they see at home. And even if you're a parent and you struggle with money and you haven't been successful and you've done everything the wrong way, be honest with your kids. Share it with them. Tell it to them. And say, I'm going to figure this out, and we're going to try some different things. And I want you to help come along on this journey. Don't shield them from it, because the other alternative is to let some teacher at school that you barely know, you don't know what their financial situation is like, to teach your kids how to manage money, when the end result is probably going to be them ending up just like you are as a parent. So embrace it. That's what I would say. Now, I realize that's hard, very hard. But for some of you out there listening to this, try opening up. I think you'll find tremendous benefit from it.
And I would just honestly, Chris, from when you say that, I get goosebumps, because 100%, like, when we went through this at the beginning, we sheltered our kids from what we were going through. And it came to a point where we were just upfront. We were upfront because I think we get this question a lot, Brad. I've seen it in groups, and it's like, people don't want to, like, not spend as much money on Christmas, or they want their kids to feel left out, and they have all these worries about how their kids are going to feel if they can't do these things. And, like, we brought our kids along with us, same exact story like you just said, and just being upfront and being like, hey, we messed up, we didn't do this right. And now on the flip side, years later, like, my son just graduated college debt free, paid for himself. You know, my daughter's in nursing school, on track to be debt-free, paid for herself, because we didn't do a good job of saving that money. But through bringing them through that and being honest and upfront and bringing them through the journey, like, my son initially was like, I'm going to go to Florida State. And had I been in those old days, he'd have $50, $60, $100,000 in debt right now, but instead of walking him through this, he went local, lived at home, which, trust me, was not fun for either of us, but he's debt-free. And so, yeah, when you say that, totally, I 100% support that. Be open and upfront with your family. It is life-changing if you do that.
Yeah.
There's no shame in it, because that's the normal. And people have to realize that they have done the same things that everybody else does, and that their journey to paycheck, no emergency fund, no retirement, there's thousands of people that they come into contact with on a monthly basis that are in the same boat as them. Don't be ashamed of it. Just admit where you are, move forward. And that's the job of a coach, right? To help you see the future, not dwell on the past. And Ryan, I would say to you this: had you not shared that with your kids and relied on a teacher at school, would they have turned out the same way they are today? And I think I know what the answer is, but I want to see what your response is.
Yeah, it would be no. And I think, going back to what I said earlier, and not on purpose of, like, trying to undo what's being taught at school. It's the same thing like when Brad told me, I'm going to get out of debt. And I'm like, you're crazy. Like, it's just so wrapped in our minds that any idea of living any differently than paycheck to paycheck is so crazy that I would have just been undoing it, not on purpose, but just because, like, instead my kids were coming home and say, yeah, my my teacher said, tires are an emergency and it's okay to put that on a credit card. Instead, I'm going, whoa, no. That's the wrong thing. That's not an emergency. That's a planned expense. And so we were correcting the other way, where if they would have said that before, I would have been like, yeah, he's absolutely right. We put tires on the credit cards all the time because we used to. So.
And Brad, that comes back to a question you asked me earlier. Maybe perhaps I didn't get as much pushback because I didn't define an emergency that way.
Right.
In fact, I use that very example with every class that I ever taught. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. You got a flat tire and you go to the tire shop and they tell you that your tire is so bald it's got to be replaced. Is that an emergency? No, that's poor planning. It's exactly what it is. You admit it up front. Tires don't last forever. Belts don't last forever. Brakes don't last forever. Those things have to be planned for.
Yeah.
Emergencies are things like, ooh, I tripped walking out to the car and I fell and broke my ankle and I can't work for the next 3 weeks and I've got no income coming in. You don't expect to fall down and trip and break your ankle. There's a difference.
Right.
And perhaps the reason I got less pushback is because I came from it from a totally different perspective, the things that you teach. And I think there's not too many parents that are going to disagree with, don't write up a bunch of credit card debt.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think part of what we're talking about too is not only, like you said, Chris and Ryan, you opening up to your kids and your family is also is realizing that us as parents, if we're struggling with our finances, is to take 100% responsibility of that and understand that just because you weren't taught this stuff in school doesn't mean that there's not resources out there. I mean, that's why our business exists is to help people learn this information so that they can turn it around. And I just had a conversation with an individual, and we're in the middle of workshop week as we are getting ready to, or as we're recording this episode right now. And this individual used the excuse not to, participate in our membership because the holidays are coming around and they needed the money to buy presents. And the first thing I thought of after you guys are talking and what you guys have been able to do, Ryan, sending now one kid through school debt-free, now getting ready to send another one, hopefully, through debt-free. Chris, you look at what you've been able to do for yourself and for your family, and I'm thinking to myself, you realize this could be the best gift that you ever give yourself and your family and your kids and their futures by getting this stuff straightened out and getting out of this way of life. It is, in all three of us, as we're sitting here talking, we're talking not only just about what it's done for ourselves, but it's what it's done for our family and what it's going to do beyond that by them now being able to pass this stuff down to their kids. But it's amazing to me how many of us get stuck in that, though, like, this is just the way it is. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
It's hard being a parent. It's very, very hard being a parent. And particularly for me, none of my three kids were alike. They all had different personalities, different drives and motivations. But you have to trust yourself as an adult that saying no sometimes is the best gift that you can ever give your kid in the long run. The kids are resilient. They will bounce back. I mean, heck, they'll forget about a lot of it. But we as parents think that when we can't provide for our kids, that at least at Christmas time, that's our chance to show them our love. Love is not something that just happens one day a year. Love is something that happens for a whole lifetime. And that was something that was difficult for me and difficult for my wife to initially to understand. But we realized eventually when we were able to put our kids through debt-free and give each one of them a fairly nice car coming out of college, that they didn't feel the need to go out and get a student loan or a car loan, that those were the best gifts we could ever give them. And I just would say to the parents out there, just think long-term, think big picture. You will really appreciate having done so if you do that.
Yeah. Love that, Chris. Hey, thanks for being on. I appreciate you sharing your expertise on this, and it's been awesome to have you on. We'll have to bring you back for a few more episodes on some other topics, man.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, all right, we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back with some celebrations.
Hey, if you love planners, this is for you. But do you know why planners frustrate me? Because they only really get it half right. Now, sure, they're really good and fancy about helping you manage your time, which is really important, obviously. That's what a planner's for. But where they get it wrong is money, the second most valuable resource in our lives. Most planners don't include any financial planning, things like, keeping track of paydays, Bills, due dates, spending, yearly expenses, budgets, cash flow planning, debt elimination plans, and goal planning, right? None of that stuff. That's a real pain. And then what? Then you got to create your own in some silly binder, right? And who has time for all of that stuff? So instead, what happens? Nothing, right? A lot of people tend to ignore their finances even more, and things only get worse. Well, that all ends today because I am so excited to announce and release my brand new, totally awesome Debt Freedom Planner. This thing's awesome, by the way. Now, before you say, Brad, I've already got a planner. This is not an ordinary day planner. This is the Debt Freedom Planner, which is a companion tool that works with your day planner, and it's built to help you manage your money, pay off more debt, and melt away financial stress. And I believe this is the tool that a lot of people who want to take control of their finances have been waiting for. So head on over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu to get access to your planner today.
Hey, what's this I see? I thought this was a party! Let's dance!
All right, all right. You guys know that sound means it's time for the celebrations of the show today. And today we are kicking it off with Morgan Blanton. Morgan says, I paid cash for a new bed, mattress, bed and box spring at a rent-a-center. They were confused when I was shopping and then paid cash for my mattress. She says, I don't trust online mattress sellers, and RAC is the only local delivery service. I bought my bed frame and box spring online and assembled them all myself. Good job, Morgan, paying cash. I love that. Great win.
Ann Barrett planned out my meals after getting paid this past Wednesday, and I look to save at least $200 out of my budgeted food money. So we'll stick to it and put it into savings.
There you go, Ann. Great win for you. Congratulations. Brenda Philhauer. I got some crafts at yard sales, many brand new. I will be doing some crafting this weekend, and I am nearly done with all of my Christmas gifts as well. Brenda, great win. Congratulations.
Cindy Berman, got my will done, power of attorney, advance directive, all that stuff in line, and I had cash to pay for it.
Yeah, Cindy, awesome. Hard topic to talk about and get done. Not exactly fun stuff to discuss, but so important. So congratulations to you, Cindy. That's a great win. Jennifer Cormier was given some apples, so I'm making apple pie to sell to make up a shortfall in my budget this month. Jennifer, I love that you are getting creative and you are coming up with income-producing activities rather than just sulking and complaining. You are taking action. That is such a great attitude, proactive attitude. Love it. Great win.
And Michelle Vondran, going to sell some items we don't use and have started shopping for Christmas with cash from my sinking fund.
There you go, Michelle. Congratulations to you guys, and congratulations to all of you listening who are doing the hard work at improving your finances and reducing financial stress. It is a lot of hard work, but it is well worth it. We're proud of you guys. And if you're just getting started with our podcast, or maybe you've been listening for some time and you're interested in how you can get started on the road to financial freedom, go ahead and visit our website at balancesense.com and sign up for my free Life Without Payments workshop, where I'm going to show you the first steps that have helped people just like myself, Ryan, heck, even Chris, who was our guest today, and tens of thousands of other people just like you kick financial stress and worry for good. And thanks for hanging out with us here today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our podcast. So please leave us an honest review. We read every single one of those. And as you guys know, the Debt Free Dad podcast is here to help you live a happier and stress-free financial life. So if you know someone who could benefit from our show, please give us a share. We would appreciate that, and we appreciate you. And we will see you guys on an upcoming episode. Take care.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us here today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our YouTube show. So please give us a like or leave us some honest feedback on this video. And if you want the latest from the show, obviously be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe to our channel. And for the latest resources, or if you want more information on how to kick debt and financial stress, please be sure to check out the links in this video or head over to therealdebtfreedad.com. We'll see you guys on an upcoming show. Take care.